Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. In today's episode, we're talking about Max's transformation from hitting bottom to creating a flourishing relationship. The things we chat about are why and how to pursue continuous personal growth, building and eroding trust with ourselves and our partners, making decisions with conviction, and the true cost of inaction. Now let's get into it.
Hey everyone, before we introduce Max, I want to share with you why he's here. Max wrote a post on Facebook that hit me like a ton of bricks. It was something that I reread a couple of times, and after we did the interview, I asked Max to go back and record it in his own voice so that you could hear it the way that it was intended. So before we introduce Max, I'm going to share that with you here.
Men, regardless of what you think or believe, your relationship with your woman is on shaky ground. Here's why. You believe you're doing enough, or you believe you've already done enough. Either way, you, my friend, need to question what you are taking for granted. When you come home from work and make the same excuses about your day being massive and tough and how you're too tired. When you climb into a few harmless beers after work. When you put off going to the gym because some fuckwit said dad bods are in. When you take your foot off the gas and stop growing together with your woman, you are killing your relationship. And I have 200% been there. It got so bad for me at one point, I blamed my wife for the amount of pot I used to smoke. I would avoid her after a session at a mate's house and thought I was doing a pretty solid job of her not knowing. I was fucking delusional. Think about it from your perspective. What do you do to escape your reality? Drink, smoke, sex, drugs, food? The first step is owning it. It's what set me free. Owning it allowed us to level up like I never knew possible. My wife and I now, we are each other's biggest assets. We've grown from renting a shitty unit to owning multiple properties. We both started our own companies. I'm currently running 2 myself. I get to watch my first kid come into this world and be here every day to watch him grow up. But at first, I didn't get it. And here's the kicker. It's not your woman's responsibility. It's fucking yours. Because your life is your responsibility. If you're fortunate enough to have someone in your life who loves you and cares for you, it's your responsibility to go all in and be the best fucking version of yourself. You need to take control of the narrative. Be the masculine and allow her, no, scratch that, empower her to fully lean into her feminine. Every time she asks or nags, depending on how far you've let it go and you don't get it done. Every time she has to do the jobs you said you'd do, or she has to follow you up when you haven't. Every time you complain to your mates that once you get married or have kids that sex goes out the window. That's your responsibility. You can change your outcome in a heartbeat. Simply put, make a fucking decision. Start going to the gym every day and looking after yourself. See how she responds. Show up and surprise her with a night or 2 away and don't tell her where you're going. Come home and take over the kitchen. Cook something she loves and spoil her. Put the same fucking effort into your relationship as you did when you first got together. Watch what happens. Because here's the rub, brother. Your relationship took a dive when you stopped. You got fat, dumb, and happy. You took your foot off the gas. It's time to step up to the plate and recommit to your relationship. The grass may look greener on the other side. And it was greener when you first signed up too, wasn't it? But you let it grow wild. You stop watering it. You stop nurturing it. Now, before you decide to jump the fence, consider this. When you jump that fence, you'll be taking you with you. I'll say that again. When you jump that fence, you'll be taking you with you. If you don't change your mindset towards your relationship, you'll get the same result regardless of how green the grass on the other side is. Go all in, brother, or stop wasting her fucking time.
Throughout the interview, you'll hear us refer to this Facebook post. So this is the one we're talking about. Okay, now let's get into it. Welcome to the Date Forever podcast, everyone. Today we're welcoming Max. Max heads up the Next Level Leader project, and back in 2013, he took a stand for his life. He went from bottoming out with drugs and alcohol, alienating his wife and the people in his life to create his world from the ground up. He's since created 3 businesses, bought 5 properties, coached over 130 businesses and men to grow not just in their companies, but in themselves. He's in a 13-plus year relationship with his wife, Jackie, and he's about to have his first child. Welcome to the show, Max.
Thank you very much, guys. Awesome to be here.
It's great to have you. So, Max, we know that you've had a pretty big journey to get where you are now. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I reckon a lot of people go through this journey at some point in their life. We all have that moment of sort of clarity and they go, well, something's got to change. And for me, that was back in 2013. The interesting bit is from all the people I've worked with over the years, one thing I find really prevalent is that the change usually comes after a massive sort of life event, like someone dies or there's a cancer or there's an accident or there's something tragic happens. And then people go, all right, cool, now I need to actually kind of question their mortality, and they go, well, let's move forward. I've been a little bit complacent. I haven't been committed to the things I said I want. Life's too short and all that sort of stuff. I didn't have that moment. And one thing that's always been really curious for me is how everyone else comes to have that change. So for each person, it's different. So if you listen to this, your version of this is always going to be your version of this. My version was I was sitting in a car yard. I'd been working there for about 2.5 years. A friend of mine was about to turn 30 and he invited me, just myself and him, because all the other lads were out for whatever reason, to go over to Bali for 2 weeks. So I had 2 weeks away from work, which gave me time to just kind of think. And one thing I've found over the last 8 years, since 2013, that the more stuff we can remove, the more clarity we have about our lives. You just get this sort of this blank canvas to be able to create without any outside noise. And since reflecting on that moment, I realized that's what had happened. 10 years prior to that, leading up until that 2013 point, I'd always excelled at my job. I'd kind of done everything in a business, never run my own, but I could do all the bits. I was just curious and I liked to get involved, but I never pushed any further past that. And there was always this feeling inside of me like there was more to this than what I was seeing. But my answer to that wasn't, let's go and figure it out, because I thought I knew what I knew and that was all there was to know. Even though I had this feeling, I never kind of expressed it. So how that then showed up was I would go and play soccer on the weekends and I'd just write myself off. So I got to that point in 2013 and went, fuck this, I'm not doing that anymore. I can't keep doing the same thing. Get into a job, 6 months, 12 months, year and a half, loving it, then hate it. Go and get another job. I still got to take me to the new job. And I might have that little honeymoon period, but then shit gets hard, which is kind of the perfect analogy for a relationship, right?
Yeah. You
get into it and it's just like full on for the first few months or however long, a year if you're lucky, and then it falls off. And that's what happened with my job. I just went, I can't do this. So I quit. I walked into my boss's office and I quit. I took a pay cut of about 50K, lost the car that I was driving around. I got a brand new car every day that I didn't have to look after in any way, shape or form. No fuel, nothing, no rego, absolutely zero. Didn't have to do anything for it. They just went, here's another one, off you go. And I had that for almost 3 years. So to have that, not have that anymore, and then all the perks that came with it, it was like,
that sucks.
Like, my life, like literally how petty my life was, how shallow my life was what if I don't have this car? How am I going to live and survive? We had another car, but that's where my level of thought was. And I was like, that is such a dumb thing. Like now I look back and I go, man, like it was just mind blowing how stuck I was in my own shit. And making that call to change it, like shifted everything for me.
So was there something within that Bali trip, I guess, that really flicked the switch for you?
Not really. Like the Bali trip itself, I think just kind of cemented what I already knew. Okay. So the Bali trip was pretty inconsequential. My mate doesn't drink. He can't. He's got a liver condition. So it wasn't like we were over there having a bender. Like we actually sat in a surf resort right on the water for 2 weeks. So we'd wake up in the morning, go surfing, come back in, have some food, maybe go into town for a bit, come back, surf again, have some food, sleep. Like it was just this little
a retreat.
Yeah, it was a retreat, little routine, and yeah, it was. It wasn't like a typical what you would see on the snapshots on the 7 o'clock news type. Bali trip's gone wrong. No, it wasn't like that.
So 2013, you've been running this cycle of get a job, in it for a year or so, lose momentum, quit, rinse, repeat, new cars every day, toys, playing soccer on the weekend, writing it off. But you had that underlying sense that there's got to be more to life than this. When you came back from that trip and you quit your job, I assume that, being with your partner for quite a long time, she was with you at this stage, right?
Yeah. So I can't actually remember the year itself, but I think it was about 20, 36, 37 now. Yeah, it would have been about 24 when I got with her, when we started seeing each other, and it wasn't until end of 2011 that we moved to Cairns.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been together quite a lot. We actually spent 6 months in South America, just the two of us. So we had definitely lived together, like in each other's pockets, and knew each other really, really well. At that point, we had our first house. Might have had our second one at that stage. So there was some stuff shifting, and I think that's where it started to really come on. It started to question it for me. Was we made a few steps forward, but there was still something missing.
So was that's obviously one of those moments where it's like a fork in the road, and it's like you can choose to keep going how you've been going, or you can actually start to make some different decisions and go in a different direction. But obviously when you've got a partner and you've got a relationship and you've got those things like houses and, responsibilities, taking a 40, 50K pay cut is a big decision to make. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
One thing we've become superstars at is making decisions together. And I suppose the underlying current of that is communication. Like at its very, very core. And I know a lot of the things we'll probably say here today for me or for you might mean like, oh, fuck yeah, I've heard that before. Communication, make decisions together, include each other and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, no, that's the foundational shit. Like that was the thing I wasn't doing. It was this whole men are strong, therefore they keep all that shit inside. They've got to figure it out on their own. And I was like, figuring it out on my own meant I'd smoke like 3 or 4 joints a night after I finished work, and I try and manipulate my way out of the house by doing all the good chores around the house, just so my wife would go, oh yeah, cool, sweet, just go and hang out with your mates. It was like it wasn't until like last year, even start of this year, that I realized that when I went deep enough into it, that's what I was actually doing. Like still this far along, 7 years, 8 years later, I'm still thinking about that moment and how I was manipulating the situation with my wife so that I could pull the wool over her eyes so she wouldn't know I was off doing what I was doing. She knew what I was doing as soon as I said I was going to my friend's house.
Yeah.
Like she's not an idiot. And then when I walked in the door and I smelled like a fucking bushfire, it's like, she's not dumb. Like she's got a PhD, for God's sake. She's not an idiot. So that process of going through figuring out, well, the communication and the decision-making thing to make that together was a really big part of it. And when we actually had the conversation, one thing that sticks with me a lot, and she doesn't say it nearly as much anymore, every now and then, like maybe once every 12 months, it might pop up. She'll say, when Max is unhappy, the world's unhappy. Or everyone else is unhappy. And what she means by that is that, not that I live out loud, but you can sense when my energy is or isn't there and what kind of energy it is. I'm that sort of guy. When I walk into the room and you know me, you know if I'm up or I'm down. And she could tell. And if I was down, she was down, and she'd always want to try and fix it. And she was never this person that you need to change, you need to change, you need to change. She was always, like in hindsight, I still unpack, I still don't quite get it. But however she did it, she slowly, it was kind of like a trail of breadcrumbs almost. But the most astonishing thing about Jackie is that she persevered with me because she could see it as well. She didn't know what she could see, but she knew there was something else there because I wasn't this guy all the time. It was like this small fraction that would unstick all the good shit. And that was the bit, because you never knew when it was going to come out. So when we made that decision together, that was the premise for it. Is that cool? Let's go and find this guy who doesn't have to be the guy who when he's not happy. Now, it still happens because I'm not happy all the time.
Yeah.
But now it's a matter of, it's not a like, where are you going now? It's like I don't drink anymore. I don't smoke anymore. I don't do either of those things. So it's like I've completely removed that shit out of my life. So it's not even a question anymore. And it's it's a bit of a badge of honor that I can go from that. And do I want to have a drink? Fucking oath. Would I have would I have a smoke? Yeah, hell yeah. And I probably will again. It's not like I was addicted to it. It was just, it didn't serve me. It didn't serve us. and it added gaps and unknown stuff that we didn't need. Like the unknown we needed was positive stuff that we wanted to grow towards, not I've got to
chaos.
deal with you. Yeah, 100%. Perfect way to put it. Yeah.
So what was some of the impact, I guess, on your relationship with yourself and your wife during that stage? So
trust was a big one. Like it extended beyond drugs and alcohol through to things like sex as well. It's like very early on in our relationship, before any of this happened, before I made the change, like when we were still probably 2 years in, I cheated on Jackie. And she had I don't even know what you call it. You guys might have a good word for it, but she could see something back then. And how it happened was one of those, like, I almost don't remember it. Not an excuse. I'm just saying that the state I was in wasn't a good one. I was completely written off, and then some shit went down, and the first thing I did was go and tell her. So, hey, I fucked up. This is what I did. And I immediately thought, if that was me, I would be out. And she was not out. And that wasn't even a turning point for me. Like, I still didn't even see it. Not then. Like, it was still another 5 or 6 years before I really figured out what the fuck was going on.
It's very interesting that you say that, because I've observed my mates in some relationships and gone, surely that's got to be bottom, and then turns out it's not. And what looks like bottom from the outside, there's still a lot of depth that a lot further it can fall. So it's interesting that you're reflecting and going, surely that would have been it for her, but she held on to you and saw, I guess, the potential.
Well, see, I actually, this is bringing up a really good point. It's something that I should really have a conversation with her about. One thing I have done, and this was a reflection only when we got here to Brisbane, and we've only been here for 4 years. It was just before we got married. So we haven't been married for that long. We've only been married for just over 12 months because it wasn't on the cards. Not that we didn't want to get married, but she's going through a PhD and there's a whole bunch of
life.
There's some shit going on. Which was far more important than that bit of paper, because the properties had grown, the businesses, her academia, all that sort of stuff. It was just going like this. So to throw that on top of it was just like, well, we're going to suck the air out of the sails. So one of the things that I said to her was, like, I was walking outside. I remember where I was. It was just here out on the patio, and I was walking out, she was walking, and I said, honey, I can't thank you enough for who you are and how you persevered with me through all that shit. It's like, it's just hitting me now that, like, if it wasn't for whatever it is that you saw in me and sticking it out, we wouldn't be here right now. And our life is fucking awesome. And like, it's not to that point. It's like, here's another thing, is that it's fucking awesome, but we're not done. Like, as far as I see, we're only just getting warmed up. I mean, we've got a baby on the way. It's like, what the fuck is that all about? So it's like, yeah, we're only just getting warmed up. And when you start to have that realization that it's not everything that you have now, everything that you have now is all that you know about. Is that if you put a dot on a page, that's what you know about right now. You flick through that 200-page book of empty pages, that's what you've got left to realize.
Fill in, yeah.
Yeah, and you're never going to get through the whole book.
So can you tell us a little bit about the transformation? Like, obviously 2013 to 2020 has been a big evolution of growth, obviously both of you as individuals, but then also as a couple. Can you tell us a little bit about what that work looked like to get to where you are now?
It's kind of funny because I felt like all the work, and this might sound a bit funny, but I felt like I was doing all the work. And what I mean by that is that I had a lot of work to do. And it wasn't, I just kind of had to meet Jackie where she was. But for me to meet her where she was, the first biggest realization that I had, and the moment it hit, and it hit really early, was this is my responsibility. Like, no question. Like, fuck everything that happens. I don't care who does anything to me. I'm in that situation. That's my responsibility to discover, fix, get rid of, change, whatever, because no one else is going to do it. It's like, we don't have superheroes that fly around in fucking capes that will just come and sweep you up and go, oh, there you go, there's a better spot, you'll be safe now. Yeah, you got to figure this shit out on your own. And the scapegoat is drugs and alcohol and sex and, hanging out with the boys and, the misogyny and all this sort of fucking rubbish that goes on that we call, it's like, no, that's just who I am, which is the thing I used to say all the time. No, this is the person you fell in love with. Stop trying to change me. Hindsight, she wasn't trying to change me. But what I realized was that it was my responsibility. So what I did was I started to act and behave differently. The one thing that has me standing here now is the thing I didn't have back then was someone to show me how to do it. I didn't know what I was doing. All I knew was I wasn't going to do the same thing again, which was simple, right? Because to do a different thing, it's like I'm sitting in a car yard working for someone else. I don't want to do that anymore. What do you want to do? It's like, well, fucking pick something.
Yeah, one thing that you don't want to do, that still leaves a whole other list of things that you might want to do.
Yeah, and that I can't even tell you what it was. If I kind of talk it out, I'll probably get there. But so I started along this path to figure out what I wanted to do. I got myself a part-time job. Essentially, I was working 4 or 5 days a week in Palm Cove of Cairns, which was the northern beaches of Cairns, right across the road from the ocean. So I'd sit at the desk, sell tours every day, 6 months on, 6 months off kind of thing for tourism industry. Most of the time, there's fucking no one in there. So the guy who owned the tour desk was actually one of my closest mates. He was my MC at my wedding. And I said, dude, can I have a job? And he's like, yeah, cool, you can have a job. And I was like, can I also study at the same time? And he goes, yeah, man, that's cool. As long as there's no customers in there to be served, then you're good.
Yeah.
So from leaving the car yard, I went to the tour company, read my first book in God knows how long. I think that was like number 4 in my entire life. And the book was a really obscure one, but property was on the mind, and it was How to Buy a House for $1.
Yeah.
I read the book. That was the thing. The information in, I couldn't tell you what it was about. The next book I read changed my life, and that was Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. Okay, so that dot on the page of that 200-page book, all the things I knew on that dot, that book blew out everything for me, that 4-Hour Workweek, because it wasn't about what the things he was talking about. It was the fact that I didn't know any of them existed. Yeah. I read one book. It took me a month. Now all these new things exist, and I was like, fuck, that was only one book. What about all the other books? And then off I went. So I started searching. I was like, the first thing I typed into Google was, how do I make money online? And that's where it really started to kick off. And I found a few different guys and started to go down the rabbit hole there. And I figured out that, well, maybe I can turn what I know into something.
Yeah. On reflection, that was like the beginning of you shifting from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Yeah, totally. In that part of my life, because again, you reflect on it, it's like you're not always in a growth mindset. There's like this weird sort of equilibrium between the two. It's just like you are in some areas and you aren't in others. And you kind of go in and out of that. And in that part of my life, that was all I was looking for. It's when you get that resistance and have the fixed mindset and don't move forward that you kind of go, oh, shit, I'm going back to old me. I've got to break myself free of it and go again. But so that's what happened for me for a period of time, is that I went down that rabbit hole, and I eventually stumbled on copywriting. And you guys will probably know a little bit about that, running your own business, is that if you can't write and sell with words, then it makes it quite difficult to be able to get your message across. So instead of going, I'm going to do my thing online, I started to learn how to become a copywriter, and got a couple of jobs with 2 ad agencies and then a bunch of just freelance clients over a period of time. And I failed English. It's like I wasn't a good writer. But
it's funny that you say that, because Gary Vaynerchuk tells this story that he himself wouldn't be able to pass the entry-level spec test to get in and get a role at VaynerMedia. He's like, I can't write. I've got, my grammar's poor, my English is poor, and yet he leaves the company but wouldn't qualify for an entry-level job.
It's pretty absurd, really. That's how I look at a lot of life now. It's like it's a really weird dynamic in our household, because Jackie's tertiary education, PhD, she lectures and teaches at schools. Like, she's done more study than majority of people I know. And then I'm on the complete other side of it.
Picking up your first book.
Yeah, totally, right? And I'm studying, but I'm kind of self-teaching. Like, I'll jump into a course here or a course there, or get a coach or whatever. That's my version. I don't want to go into a 4-year commitment where that doesn't intrigue me at all. And the conversations we have about that are quite big. She's starting to come around to, actually, it's probably a little bit of merit in what you're talking about, but she just didn't know about it. And same thing for her, is that I'm actually considering, it's like, maybe I'll go and do a psych degree or something.
There's value in both, I think.
Yeah, totally.
So you're kind of talking about some of the decision-making process, and that it can be so easy to get stuck when you're trying to make decisions. And like you were saying, you can just kind of keep doing what you're going to do, or like, I guess, be in the stands of your own life, as opposed to actually being on the court and making those decisions. So how can we overcome some of that lack of ability to make decisions?
The simple thing is you need to understand what you want. And the biggest thing for me was I didn't know what I wanted. And that's where I believe it falls down for most guys. Most relationships, that's where it falls down, is that tend to find that women understand what they want. The older they get, the more certain they become. is that they're not there to fuck around, because they're also starting to work on a bit of a biological thing too. If they haven't had kids, if they have, depending, and again, this is super general and both subjective to your situation versus mine, but generally speaking, there's something inside of women that's ticking for them, whereas for guys it isn't. So they kind of float, whatever. As soon as you figure out what you want, you go for it. That's when things start to shift. Where people get stuck, where I got stuck, and where a lot of my clients get stuck, is they're afraid of making the wrong decision. And it's funny, I was having a chat with a client yesterday, and he had 4 things that were on his plate. And I was like, why are you stuck? And he goes, I'm afraid of making the wrong decision. And I was like, how long have you been stuck with that? And he goes, since the last time we spoke. And I said, so 7 days you've been stuck with that and you haven't made the decision. Do you think not making a decision was the right thing and wasting another 7 days? Do you feel like that was the right decision? He goes, no. I was like, so now you fucked up 5 things. It's like, make a decision and figure out which one you want to do.
Not making a decision is making a decision.
100%. Yeah, it's that. And you don't need to understand it. You don't need to make the decision and it be perfect. There's this whole drive for it trying to be perfect, or even worse is worrying about what other people think, because the guy I was in 2013 and even 14, 15, 16, I was still this version. But the most scary thing for me was my closest mates figuring out that it's like, who the fuck are you to be talking about this shit? I know who you are. I know who you come from. Like my mates used to call me Broadway because there was a show on every night. It's like I'd get loaded and I'd do something fucking stupid. And to break that, you need to understand the imprint you have on other people's lives. Everything that you do every day trains a group of people in your life on how you are and how you show up. So when you change that, that's going to throw a spanner into their world, which is going to have them come to you and they're going to question you. They're going to have a crack at you, they'll support you, but you've got no control over that from that point. The only way to have any control over you getting any traction in it is to actually head it off and say, hey, listen, guys, this is what I'm up to. Is that put on 20 kilos. I'm going to spend a lot more time at the gym. I'm not going to come out and have beers anymore. I'll probably come out once a month, come watch the footy, but I'm not going to drink. So I just want, hey, I'd really love your support on this because it's affecting how I show up at work. It's affecting my relationship with my wife, my kids. I don't get to see them as much anymore. All this stuff. I need your support. The ones who actually are worth their weight will support you. The other ones won't. Being attached to those people who aren't going to support you and trying to convince them is where you lose all your energy. You don't have any time to get up to go to the gym or spend with your family because you're spending it in the wrong places. So I think it comes back to communication, like I said before, is that it's not just with your relationship with your partner, it's your relationship with everybody. If you want support, it's like you've got to go out there and make a decision and take a stand for the thing that you want.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So I know like me not making a decision kind of really impacted my life. And I guess it might sound like a bit of a trivial kind of example, but one of the examples of me not making a decision was around a concert. It was when Prodigy came to Sydney. And I really wanted to go see them. And I even jumped on the website, went and looked at the tickets and just didn't make a decision. And it was even the day of the concert as well. I was looking online and I was like, oh yeah, there's still tickets available, and just didn't make a decision. And then a couple of months later, Keith Point committed suicide. And so me not making a decision was really like, it took that whole possibility off the table for me as well to actually go and see them. And I think that was kind of a big thing. It was like, oh shit, my lack of being able to make a decision has had this flow-on effect, and it's something that I can't undo anymore. And I think up until then I was like, oh yeah, like if you don't make a decision, there's no impact. But that's really not the case.
No, you don't even know how true that statement is. It's like literally, like, I don't know, and neither do you, on how much that ripple effect of you not doing that. It's like, what would have happened if you had made that decision? It's like, who would you have come into contact with? Who could you have helped? Who could you have met? Where could that relationship have gone? Like, there are so many different things. And this is why whenever I work with people, it's that everyone's so insular. They're so worried about what other people would think. And it's like, have you ever considered that the people in your life are going through the same thing you are, and they also don't have an answer? And by you keeping it to yourself, that you're not actually allowing them to come out. And this is where it comes back to things like suicide. It's like, I didn't know. And I was like, cool, I get that. Like, knowing is a hard thing to do. However, one thing you can do and be proactive at is being super honest, open and vulnerable with the things that you're going through, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, and just having normal conversations with people. Actually connecting with those people on any level. Like, the one thing that I hate more than anything is small talk. I don't give a fuck how the weather is. Like, I really just don't give a shit. It's like, I don't want to talk about it. Any of that small, like, fucking what happened on Survivor last night, please shoot me. I don't care. And when people want to go there, it's just like, cool, man, tell me about you. It's like, oh, I do this and I do that. And it's like, I don't care about your job either. It's like, tell me about you. What floats your boat? It's like, people don't know what they want. You're not making that decision. Like, again, that's just one of those, that chalk it up as a lesson.
Yeah.
A simple one, same scenario for me, wasn't a concert, but it was as simple as at the start when you're running your business, you're pinching pennies and you're kind of going, well, hey, what should I spend my money on?
Yep.
And I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember who it was from, but the simple thing, the message I took out of that podcast was always spend money on investing in yourself. And specifically what he was talking about, if you see a book that you want, buy it. Don't hesitate, buy the book. So every time somebody says on a podcast, hey, it's this book or it's this book or it's this book, don't fucking second guess, question it. Buy the fucking book.
Yeah.
Because not buying the book gives you exactly what you had yesterday. What you had 5 minutes ago, what you're going to have for the fucking next 10 years is nothing. Or the same thing. And if you're not happy with that, then buy the fucking book.
And read it.
And read it. Yeah, totally. That would be the one thing that I'd love every man, couple, relationship, it doesn't matter, to get through is exactly your point there, Nathan, is make a fucking call.
Yeah.
Like, do it and own it. It's like, cool, hey, it wasn't meant to be. That's okay. Next time I'm going to go, like, I'm not even going to question that. It's like, cool, fucking Daft Punk come in, I am there. So rock on, let's go for that. Because I missed out on them in 2007. I may never get that chance again.
Yeah.
I had some pretty good excuses, I'm sure.
Yeah. Hey, Max, I want to circle back to something that you said about the gap between yourself and your wife.
Yep.
And obviously, if she's academic and she's busy learning and growing and evolving every day, and it sounded like, back in 2013, you were at a place where you weren't growing and you weren't, evolving, you were doing, day in, day out. And I guess something that Nathan and I have reflected on quite a lot is, I guess, that gap where if one person is doing the work and one person's growing and evolving and reading books and listening to podcasts and having deep conversations and unpacking things that have happened in their life, that gap can grow. I want to know a little bit about how is that manifesting for you guys? Like, what did that look like? And what did it look like when you started closing that gap and you started growing with her?
I had to prove myself in a lot of ways, because one of the byproducts of the way I was I would say I would do things and I wouldn't do them. Now, I don't want to use the word integrity because I think that gets thrown around a lot about having integrity and all that sort of stuff. And I don't think people really grasp the gravity of that. But the simplest version of that is that I just didn't do what I said I was going to do when I said I was going to do it. Okay, which is kind of the definition of integrity, but let's just keep it simple. That I slowly started to realize was the thing that was keeping Jackie from kind of like accepting that this was a change. It was going to take time for her to come around to the fact that this wasn't just a flash in the pan fad. So that's a really big thing. That's something that keeps popping up. That's always in my head. That's the trust thing, is that you've shown up like this guy for 6-7 years. That's a lot of undoing to do. And one thing I see a lot of people do is they give it a week.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. How's that six-pack coming along, champ?
Yeah.
Yeah, don't have it yet? Yeah, no, you should give up. Fucking back to the couch for you, champ. So it's that whole methodology. There's no end. There's a beginning. There's a decision. Then there's a journey. And one thing that I started to realize is that, and this took a long time too, because you hear it and you hear it and you hear it, which is it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Yeah. I used to think that was such a fucking stupid thing to say. I was like, that's so dumb. What the fuck does that mean? And then I started to realize what that was, is that me being on this podcast is part of the journey. It's not a destination. I didn't know it existed until I put the post out last week. Like, that's you not taking that chance on the ticket, Nathan. Like, that's what that is that I wasn't going to put that post out. I literally just hired a coach 2 weeks ago. He goes, I need you to write this thing. I was like, cool. I wrote it, put it out, and then off it went. And like within 20 minutes, Semi had popped up and I was like, oh shit. Wow. Okay, cool. So that's what that looks like. Oh man, like manifesting it the whole time. Yeah, I had to bridge that gap. So I had to prove myself. I had to show up and do the work. So do the work. And I'm still doing the work 8 years later. I'm still not there. Like, there's still so many things that I could be working on. that I can see, and Jackie she's not a big sharer at the best of times, but I know that there's this, okay, cool, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it type of thought. And I was like, I've seen you say things like this before and not follow through. Like even to this point, like when I came to her and said, hey, listen, I need a coach and here's how much it's going to cost. I knew I'd done the work up until that point for that to be a pretty simple conversation. The way it went was not the way I thought it was going to go. She said yes very quickly, and all of a sudden I had a COO. She goes, I'll help you grow it. And I was like, fuck, get out of here. Because I put the work in and I'd showed her that that's who I was and that's who I was going to be. And that was going to be the vehicle. So it's that over time, the gap came right in. And now the conversation's like, Jackie's more in love with me now than she's ever been before. It's because I'm actually having conversations with her now about shit that matters, things that are deeper, things that are real. Her PhD is a philosophy major. So she's a deep thinker. Is what she does. And I didn't know that was going to happen. Again, I didn't know that was going to happen. But what I did was I figured out what I wanted. Byproduct of that was I learned who I was. I went deep on who I was. Really understood who I was, because I can't affect change on anyone else if all I'm doing is trying to get you to change you and me trying to figure out who you are. And I was like, I don't even know who I am. If I don't know who I am, and I don't know what I want, and I don't have any conviction behind it, I haven't committed to anything, and I haven't put any work in, how the fuck am I going to help you? And that's what I had to do, was do this, do this, do this. And then people come to you, you attract them. And like law of attraction is what it is. I don't typically I don't talk in that way.
Yeah.
However, that's what happened. People saw the difference. You take an action, they show up. They go, oh, wow, that's how I feel. It's like, and you look at that post, there's a perfect example. It's like that post that I put out, I didn't realize was going to have that impact. I was actually shit scared to put it out because it was things I'd never said in that way before. Like I dialed up my conviction to another level, and I used words I typically wouldn't use that could literally take people from being off. Yeah, like get them off the fence. I was like, that's what I wanted to do. It's like you're either on the fence about me or you're not. And it's like, you're in or you're out.
So before we get into that, so I want to reflect on what you just shared there, because people kind of talk about trust as this thing that takes a lifetime to build and then it can be broken in a matter of seconds. I actually think that trust can be broken in all of those micro moments. I don't think it has to be a big thing that breaks trust. I think it can be that, continuous, slow erosion of trust, where exactly like you said, Max, where you were making, a commitment to Jackie to pick up something on the way home and then you didn't do it, or you said, oh yeah, babe, I'll wash the sheets and do the bed, and then you don't do it. It could be, oh, I'm going to make that dinner reservation, and then you don't do it. All of those micro moments of not honoring what you said you were going to do erode trust as much as the big stuff, as much as the big deceptive, manipulative actions. Like I think that illusion of trust having to be broken in a big way, I just don't think it's true.
Yeah, totally. I would agree with that. I got one friend whose partner, his wife, cheated on him. And I'd argue that the trust for her was broken for her to do that on her side. So like she broke trust in a second. He broke trust over time. If that makes sense. It's like she got to a point, yes, she didn't own up to it and say, hey, listen, here's how I'm feeling, which would have been the adult thing to do. And I can speak from experience. And then it all came out that like she did this thing, and it's like, yeah, but what did you do? It's like, don't make this about her. Yeah, that's fucked. She shouldn't have done that, and that's terrible. How did you cause that? Because if you showed up the same way that you showed up when you started the relationship, the same guy she married, none of this would have happened. I can't say that for sure, but you would have given yourself a far better chance, right? That's that piece. And I didn't even know it was a thing, but I know that one thing that Jackie loves more than anything is that I'm happy. And that took a lot of time to figure out what was going to make me happy. And making the bold decisions, like we moved away from Cairns. I was away from Jackie for 14 months based on one of these bold decisions we had to make. So that decision led to where we are now. And we had to persevere. It was fucking tough, but no one's willing to make those tough calls. It's like if you don't have enough money to go and figure out what you want, but you're sitting in a house that you can barely afford the mortgage on, sell your house.
Yeah, make a different choice.
Buy a different house, a smaller house. What are you trying to prove to who? It's like your kids don't care that we're in a big house. Your kids care when you're not there.
Yeah.
Your wife cares when you're not there. It's like you can't be the martyr and say, I'm doing all this for my family. It's like what you're not doing is showing up for your family. Because that $20 bill and the $100 bill that they can use to go to the fucking movies or whatever it is that they do doesn't keep them warm at night. That's not who they fell in love with.
No.
Like that's the bullshit things that we just keep telling ourselves over and over again. And that's the thing that pisses me off because I know I did it. I used to use that as like, cool, yeah, no, I'll make the money and I'll get what I want. I was like, no, let's have it now and then live into the best version of ourselves. It's like a place to come from, not a place to get to.
Hey, so Max, I want to circle back to this post. You know, as we said, it was quite a divisive kind of post. Give us a summary of the guts of that post and what you were communicating.
Is that we think we've done all the work. You get to a point in your relationship and you take your foot off the throttle. There's no longer any momentum going forward. You go, yeah, cool, we've got it all. Yeah, the house is there. Mow the lawn on the weekend, go and have beers with the boys, work my ass off. Wife seems to be happy. Yeah, we fight, but who doesn't? Oh, we don't have sex. Oh, that's just marriage after kids. I'm like, oh my fucking God. No, it's not. That's just because the environment you're in, surrounded by every other fuckhead who thinks the same way as you, that's your world. Step outside of that world for a second, you realize there's a whole bunch of people there who don't live like that and who have not taken their finger off the button. They're driving forward. It's getting better and better and better and better for them. It's like it shouldn't go backwards. And if you think it should go backwards, why the hell did you get into it in the first place? If you knew that was going to happen, because that's what everyone says.
Yeah.
And I guess that comes back to decision making. That decision to do nothing is actually sending you backwards.
Yeah, totally. Well, here's what happens is that, and I did this, I've caught myself doing this a few times. I ask my wife what she wants. Are you happy? Yeah, hon, of course I'm happy. Stop asking people if they're happy. Go and make yourself happy because they only know what they know. They don't know what a version of you on like 10x looks like.
Yeah.
Because when I get through with what I'm doing in the next 12 months, I have no idea. Like, I don't know who I'm going to be next week. It's like, I don't know who I'm going to be in 6 months and 12 months, but I know I'm not going to be the same guy. I'm not going to think the same. I'm going to be different in every way, shape or form as far as how I view my situation and what I'm capable of, which is going to give me a new level of confidence. What that's then going to do for my relationship is going to open up opportunities about things. Jackie's going to see things in me she's never seen before. Things that might reflect back when she first met me. That butterfly feeling when you first meet someone, it gets all really exciting and you just can't wait to see that person again. It's like, I get that on a fucking daily basis. It's like, I enjoy spending time with my wife. The best thing that happened to us was isolation. It's like everyone goes like they're going mad with their kids and all that sort of stuff. I don't have the kids yet, granted, but I don't fucking hate my wife.
Yeah.
Whatever you tolerate, you'll get more of. Whatever you give your energy to, you'll get more of. If you're not having sex, then I'd have a long, hard look at yourself. And I was like, when was the last time you went for a run or to the gym? It's like, when was the last time that you surprised your wife? When was the last time you did something without asking to take her somewhere, to go and do something? Stop waiting for her to make the decisions, because as soon as she starts making all the decisions and wearing the pants, she doesn't fucking need you anymore. And that's that like death by 1,000 cuts to the trust, which is what you spoke about before, Semi, is that you're murdering your relationship one beer at a time. And I'm not having to go at people who drink. Go for it, but do it because you enjoy it. And here's a challenge. I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, if you enjoy beer so much and you do it because you enjoy the taste or whatever, go to 0% alcohol beer. Okay? You can have as many of those as you fucking like at the end of the day. No one's going to care. But if you're having beer because you like the taste, then drink 0%. If you're drinking because you're trying to escape from something, I'm going to find out pretty quickly. You're going to get jacked at 0%, aren't you? Which then means you need to address something far bigger than just, oh, I've always had beer. I've always done this. I've always done that. It's like, no, you've always been dishonest with yourself and you don't have the courage to go deep enough to figure out who the fuck you are. And don't be afraid about your wife not liking this new person, because I guarantee you, she's screaming out for it. She just doesn't know how to ask for it. She thought she did when she asked you to mow the lawn and do the laundry and pick up the kids. But you didn't kind of do any of that. Now she's nagging you. It's like, you're just writing your own story, and I can tell you how it all ends. You guys can tell yourselves how it ends.
That's it. Max, I'm really curious. You talked about how wonderful your relationship is and that butterflies feeling. I'd love to know, like, what are some things that you practically do in your relationship to keep it fueled up in that state of dating forever?
One thing that we've started to do recently, and this is the unknown. I think the more we can point our relationship at things we don't know about, the more vibrant it is. And what I mean by that is that something simple I started to do recently was go for a walk, probably 5-6 times a week with my wife. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't say anything. And whenever we do talk, or whatever it might be, it's deep, and we talk about shit we would never talk about when we're sitting at home because we're cooking dinner and the phones are out or doing whatever it is. It's just that quiet, uninterrupted time with no distraction. And I think that that's really important, so you can actually go deeper on the things that you need to talk about. Because think about it like this: every distraction or job or priority or whatever it is, all these things that you have going on in your life stop you from going deep on anything. If you can't go deep on anything, you're never going to get to the root cause or how you really feel about a certain situation. Okay, you go broad on a lot of stuff and you got a lot of things, but you never go deep enough to really figure out what you guys want. And to also understand that the person you were when you started your relationship isn't the person you are now anymore. So you also need to understand that too. It's like you aren't the same people. But one thing that I started to realize is that we started to go deep on things a lot more often. Interesting thing is before I started doing that for me, I wasn't doing it for Jackie. I was doing it for me at that time. Was Jackie used to ask me every week, hey, want to go for a walk? Want to go for a walk? Want to go for a walk? And I'd sit on the couch and go, no, I don't feel like it. That there was one of those unknowns. I didn't know that was going to happen, but I was working on myself. And what happened was Jackie met me at that point. She's interested. She's curious. She sees that as an opportunity to be able to have deeper conversations, not to mention we're looking after our health at the same time. So that's one of them. Another thing is the spontaneity inside of a relationship, and that gets bandied around a lot, but it doesn't have to be big. You don't have to spend $150 on, a dozen roses. So pick a flower out of the garden when you walk inside. Like, it could be something simple like that, or grabbing your partner and giving them a massive hug and telling them how much you appreciate what they do.
Or a Broadway kiss.
Or a Broadway kiss. Not me as Broadway kiss, but your version of that. No one wants to kiss that version of Broadway. So yeah, it's those little things, but the big things is you've got to lead from the front. You've got to do you while they're doing them, and then you come together and have that discussion and conversation and connect. Is that Jackie and I's trajectory has been like Jackie'd have a shitty job and I'd push, and then I'd have a job that I wasn't crazy on, and then she'd push, and then we'd kind of go like this. And it was kind of like, it's very rare. There's only been a couple of times in our relationship where we've both had serious jobs. It's been one propping the other up to help them get to where they're going. Yes, we were both learning at the same time if we weren't doing the thing we were really, really loving or not making a great deal of money on or whatever it is. It's like it was this, we were helping people get up the ladder. And Jackie's next iteration, once she gets through having our kid and all that sort of thing, like, that's super exciting to me. Like, I can't wait for her to create that when the time is right. But my job now is to ensure she has the best opportunity to do that. So I've got to go all in on my thing, and she's going to support me on that, and I'm supporting her as far as the kid goes. So it comes back to really understanding who we are, and also what we both want. And you can't have a successful relationship if you keep that shit inside, because what happens is you bottle it down and someone says, I want to do this. And then you over time start to resent that person because they're going after what they want. But you feel like, I've just got to bust my ass and go to that job I fucking hate. I was like, well, have you mentioned that to anybody? Have you done anything about that? So while the little things are important, I think the biggest thing is really identifying who you want to be as a man, as a couple, and where the fuck you guys are going. Because like I said, it's a journey. It's like, if you don't know where you're going, how the fuck are you going to get there? Because you don't just hop on a town bus and ride around until you get back to the start again. Like, that's not a thing. You don't leave to go on holidays and not have chosen somewhere to go. That would be weird. People would call you crazy.
And yet people are doing it with their lives.
Well, it's 100%. And that's the taking the foot off the gas.
Coasting.
Like, yeah, you've just stopped giving a shit. And then you become the martyr, and you make up things and excuses like, I don't have time. It's like, oh no, I've got to do it. I've got my kids to consider. I was like, but your kids and your wife don't want to see this grumpy motherfucker come home every day and be miserable. They don't go, oh yeah, but he put bread on the table. We need to get out of our own heads and go, cool, how am I creating this situation? It's like, dude, you don't like what you do. Okay, cool, go fix that. Go figure that out first. Tell your wife. let her know. So, hey, I'm fucking struggling here. I need your help. I need to go and do something different. Let's figure out a plan, how to do it. And that's what my wife is world class at. Whenever I've come to her, she goes, cool, let's put a plan in place, figure out how we can do that. And she'll sit down and she'll go through all the numbers. We've got this, and this. Here's how we're going to do it. And she'll put it all out there. She helps me create it. And I'm like, fuck. And the more I come to her, she's like, yeah, cool. Okay, what do we need to do? And it's just so powerful, but it didn't start there.
Yeah. Hey, Max, thank you so much for joining us. We've talked so much today about one of our core values at Fuel Collective, which is about being the change. And that's really about taking accountability for what you can change in your own life, but also being the change that you want to see in the world. So to say thank you for joining us, we've provided 100 days of clean water to some students in Zambia. Basically, clean water allows for good sanitation practices, which overall increases complete health and well-being. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
No worries. So if our listeners want to learn a little bit more about you and want to connect with you, how should they do that?
So at this stage, they can find me at the Next Level Leader Project on Instagram. It's Max Latimer /NLLP on Facebook. And I also have a private Facebook group for men, which is the Next Level Leader Project.
Awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us, Max. This has been rad.
Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.